Kuf Mem Gimel, the end of Kuf Mem Gimel.
Kuf Mem Gimel.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to start off over here today with a fascinating question in the Achronim. I want to be machmir. When does a person have a right to be machmir? So the answer is one doesn't have a right to be machmir on the cheshbon of something else. Okay. From my favorite bones to pick on this subject is there are many people that want to be machmir, and if they have tzitzis that rip, that one string rip, so they want to replace it. So there's a shaila in the poskim if you're allowed to replace it. Who says you're allowed to replace it? You have something that's doing a mitzvah. I'll just say over the Vilna Goyim, I know this is contrary to what I call common sense, because Torah is not common sense. That's Torah is something else altogether. The Vilna Goyim had a pair of tzitzis, that's how the story goes, that was missing a string, and a little kid stepped on his tzitzis and ripped the second string, and the Vilna Goyim gave him a big bracha, because now he can switch his tzitzis. But beforehand he couldn't. And this is a fascinating lesson, actually. Let's see if we can get it. Here we go. I'm going to show this to you because I believe this is very important. I don't know how many times I could say this over, and it's still not enough because it's against what people think. And against what people think, it's hard for them to accept. Here. Should be Yud Zayin. So many you can scoff out. I'm looking for Yud Zayin. Again. Shamati b'shem gedolei hador sheyesh ledaktek b'midas chasidus shegam im nechsar achuk echad me'aches chutin. If you're missing one string, which is still kosher, kivan shenisharach lamral chutin b'chol dalei kampos nos nochum asas acher. Maybe it's right that you should make new ones. V'chein shamati b'nechosim afurchshen Reb Menachem Mendel Miriminov. Whoever is Chassidish would know who that is, and if you don't, you're missing out. V'shamati shekem amel tzitziyot sheshazeh smach chaser chut echad b'chudu. V'gam ha'poshet atzli mistav v'delo shach b'zeh midas chasidus. There's no midas chasidus. Kivan sheyesh gam kem tzad k'peida milohayre tzitzishem b'beget v'ma shehem tashmishe k'mitzvah. And you're taking them out of service. So who says you're allowed to take them off? And if it's still kosher, so what's the reason to take them off? I would stick my tongue out at you. I would stick my tongue out at you, but it wouldn't help because you wouldn't see. Anyways, that's okay. V'al kamer isi ke mishum sefer kodesh yeshach b'zeh midas chasidus negen halacha leMoshe misina digadu meitzitza kosher. The halacha says it's kosher. Where do you come from saying that I need better? Gil, you like this? Ki hu chumra bechinam v'goremes kula neged hamashmoy shegabi pukta yesh matim tzitzis mibaged lebaged. You don't take them off. Shemashma shaloi lo hari bechinam tzitzis mitzvayso. to put them out of use is a chesaron.
From one to the other.
No, what are you doing? You throw them into the garbage.
I'm taking it off its mitzvah, but I'm not putting it one mitzvah.
Yeah, so you're doing worse.
No.
What's worse, to take it and put it into Geniza or to put it into another baggage?
No, because
don't say no. Which one is worse? Don't say no.
I can understand it being worse moving it from corner to corner.
What?
Because I'm changing his place.
At least he has a place. You didn't make him redundant altogether. I think I agree with you. No, I agree with you, but that doesn't make a difference. That's also a chesar. So here, this has a whole piece on this piece, whether it's permissible or not. And it's in the Vilna going get this little kid a big bracha because now he could change his sitters. And I just mentioned, I heard from my Rebbe, Moshe Halberstam, he said over from the Chidah, that the Sefes from a Baal of Belzer, Loi Dibra Torah. You have Lamed Aleph Chutim, you're Mekayim the mitzvah. Ella, if you have 32, then you have the school that's Neged Yetzer Hara. The school doesn't exist with Lamed Aleph Chutim, even though it's kosher l'chachila. The two things are not related.
What happened to the me that I want a Muslim mitzvah? It's my tzitzis, and I want a full mitzvah.
You know, I like that question so much that I would like to bop you over the head.
I know that, but that's why I asked it.
Okay, but since it's Corona, so I can't get that close, so I'm not going to do that. So I'll tell you, today somebody asked me, so what was, and I asked this question in my house quite often. This year I saw Moshe Feinstein had 6 answers to the question. What was Moshe Rabbeinu arguing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu about when he said that you're the guy? So he tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no, you made a mistake, you came to the wrong address, right? So I think that the answer to the question was that the whole point is Moshe Rabbeinu had to get himself out of the picture. And that's an avodah which took a week's time. All that you are, and I guess I'll say this over in tongue in cheek. The Beis Halevi one time used the mashal. He said, I was in the bathhouse in Brisk, and in the olden times they used to wear boots, very high boots, because they used to go in the mud and they get very dirty. And these high boots, for some reason, have zippers on them like they do nowadays, and you had to put them on and pull them off. You know, I've seen actually all different kinds of apparatuses that were made to have like a fork and a long piece of wood with a thing you put the back of your foot in it and you can pull it out, because you weren't able to do it. It was very difficult to do. So in the bathhouse in Brisk, there was a guy, that was his job. He was the boot puller. That's what he was called. Okay, the shuch schlepper from Brisk. And the Beis Halevi was once in the Merchatz, and the guy was pulling and he was twisting his foot. So he said, don't do like that, you're hurting me. So the fellow looks at the Beis Halevi and says, you're going to tell me how to pull people's shoes? You know, I have like a degree in this. You know what I mean? Like, so you look at the gaiva that people could have, you know, you're telling me how to pull shoes, right? No, it's comical or pathetic. I'm not sure which one. Maybe a little bit of both. And the answer is, who are you the way you want to do mitzvahs? Who asked you?
I don't want this mitzvah.
Why don't you take your lulav tomorrow? Because the Torah gives directives how things are supposed to be done. And sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu says no. If someone comes to me, and I'm not right now discussing this, well, you could say Tzul Saderach Aryeh. If somebody comes to me and says, how much money am I allowed to spend on a lulav and esrog? And I'll tell you something fascinating. It's worthwhile saying over. It should be a schus for my father, Enika Poras Mishkova. My father was a bocher, He was 16 years old, and he was in the farm store, and he took two different esrogim, and he was looking at them. Into the farm store walks in a guy with a beard. This is a 1940 something. So a guy with a beard was like a Yikar Mitzias. And he asked my father if he could see the esrog that my father's looking at. And he says, yeah. So he asked my father, are you taking it? He says, I have a shaila on it, I'm not sure. So he said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to go to Moshe Feinstein, who lives down the block, and I'm going to ask him. And this man waits patiently for my father to make a decision, and they decide they're going to Moshe Feinstein together. If I'm not mistaken, on the way, so the man tells my father, do you know who I am? And my father says, no. He says, my name is Eliezer Silver from Cincinnati. And I don't think that my father at that time knew who he was. For some reason, they didn't write the book on him yet. And he tells my father, I one time asked the Rogachover a shaila, and it took him a half a minute to answer. In other words, this is, he's boasting about his prowess in Torah. I asked the Rogachover a shaila, it took him a half a minute to answer. This is his claim to fame. Anyways, so they get to Moshe's house, and they come in together. And Moshe looks at this bacher, and the Blazer Silver, like this strange couple over here, and he says, like, what do you want? So my father says, I want to know about this esrog. Is it okay or not okay? And what do you want? He says, you're not taking it, I'm taking it. So he looks at the esrog, and he gives it back to my father, and he says, the esrog's kosher. How much does the guy want for the esrog? So my father said, $5. He says, $5? You're a yeshiva bacher. You're not allowed to spend so much money on an esrog. And he took it away from him and gave it to Blazer Silver. Got that? But he had the money. But that's out of range. And Moshe said, you cannot buy it. And
clearly that story's hard to understand, right?
That clearly is not hard to understand. That
bringing a strange story for to answer.
No, because there is Hider Mitzvah. I'll just tell you, since we have to be talking about tzitzis, I'll tell you one other story that happened with my father in Kaparas Mishkava. When I was a bacher here in Eretz Yisrael a few years ago, I think that was before I was in Al Shalom when I was a bacher, if I remember correctly. Anyways, so my father asked me, someone's going back to Detroit, if I could buy for him tzitzis and a talis, I don't know, talis coffee, what he wanted, something that needed tzitzis. And at that time, Niputz Lishma tzitzis came out. And I bought for my father Niputz Lishma tzitzis. I didn't ask him. I bought it. And I sent it to him. The Gemara in Beis says, so afterwards, I asked my father, I said, do you know that those tzitzis that you got, you probably never had tzitzis like that. Those are Niputz Lishma tzitzis. So he knew exactly what it is. Mishabur discusses it. Mishabur says that it's a chumrah that you're not mechuyev to do. So as a yeshiva bacher, so what was my father's response? Was it more than the amount that you're allowed to spend on a chumrah or not? Very straightforward question. And it costs like, I'm not saying 3 or 4 times the price of, it's very expensive, very expensive. But it's nothing to do with it. I was buying it for my father as a, what you're allowed to spend for your hidur mitzvah is one thing, but when you're buying somebody a present, it's irrelevant, right? So I told him, so he says to me, who says you're allowed to? And that's the end of the conversation. About 10 years ago, this re-happened, the same situation. My father asked me to buy him tzitzis or whatever. And again, I bought him Liputz the Shmo. And I gave them to him. I said, I want to just tell you about a story that happened with me and you 20 years ago. And I told him the story, and he had a good laugh. There was a chinuch issue. The chinuch issue. You have to know. You have to be responsible. You can't just do whatever you want. It's way. The difference is way less than it was. The difference is way less than it was. It's still, but there's also halachic issues involved. It's not going to get involved. We're not learning tzitzis right now. But it's saying you don't have a right to do whatever you want, ever. Anyways,
Don't I have the right to choose a better mitzvah?
What?
Don't I have the right to choose a better mitzvah if it falls under the category?
So this is what the question is: can I take a mitzvah and put it out of use because I want to have a nicer mitzvah? This right now, this item is zoiche to have a mitzvah done with it. You're taking that away from it. Why? Because you want. Who are you? That's the subject that we're talking about.
I never passed by a Giza box that was correct.
What?
I never heard a
You don't have ruchnius ears.
Clearly.
What?
Clearly.
All right. Anyways, so the question is as follows. We're not learning Hilchos Tzitzis for those guys who came here late. We're learning Hilchos Kriyas HaTorah. So the halacha is that b'diavad the Sefer Torah is kosher. And l'chatchila, you shouldn't lay out of that Sefer Torah. You took out the Sefer Torah already. Can you take it, put it back, and take out another Sefer Torah? What about if you have a better one? Still, what say, you're not wrong. We're going to discuss it in a minute. Let's say I sent somebody to the store. There's a lot of chuvas written on this question. I sent somebody to the store to buy olive oil for my Hanukkah menorah. And he came back and he said they sold out. So I said, okay, I have no choice. I set up my candles. And then my wife comes in and she says, you know what? I found a guy who has one bottle of oil and I have a bottle of oil. What do I use to light? Once I set up those candles in the menorah, can I take them down and light out of olive oil or not? There's a machlokes a poskim. And this is a really weird shaila. Why? Because Hazman alav milsa, you didn't do any mitzvah there. You just thought they were, as I say, where I come from, they're only the on-deck circle. Right? It doesn't happen over here. And still, it could be they're already zeicha in the mitzvah. Well, I think by the time you leave tonight, it's not going to be any question anymore. What? What? I thought Achnasa of. Oh, okay. Okay. So this is a machlokes haposkim. Machlokes, the Marsham and others, the Kaf HaChaim discusses this. If you have a right to say, and why? Because you're going to put away the Sefer Torah, so then you're making the Moitzi laws on it. Now, here the Moitzi laws on it is not a regular Moitzi law, because it is a laws. You're just being megala the laws. So, because you want to have a Mehudar Dika Kriyas HaTorah, what right do you have to embarrass a Sefer Torah? I just listen. Okay, I'm going to. The people in Abba Shalom know this. I heard from a very famous rabbi in America that the test of a rabbi is if any question you ask him, if he can find the makor for it in that week's parsha. That's the ultimate definition of rabbi. So, being that that's the definition of rabbi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, hit the Ya'ar. What does he do? Why? What about HaKadosh Baruch Hu told?
Who asked you for your opinion?
Right. Huh?
Moshe did that a few times.
So you have a kasha on him a few times. Do you have an answer? Okay. That's a very wimpy answer.
I don't know. It gets the Yashakach for breaking the Hilchos. It's a pretty nifty, scary thing to do.
Yeah. So you know what this means? I'm going to just tell you. He says that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Yasher Koyach. Right? I understand. So I'm going to just tell you something. If I'm not mistaken, this comes from the Kotzker. I can't remember. It's not this week's parsha. I apologize. But in the end of Bamidbar, Klal Yisrael go to war against Midian, and they bring back the Neshei Midian, and Moshe Rabbeinu screams at them, "What'd you bring them back alive for? You should have killed them." And the kasha that the Mefarshim asked was, he never told them to kill them. So what kind of time is it on Klal Yisrael they brought them back? So if I'm not mistaken, the Kotzker says there's no excuse not to have seichel. There's certain things which are implicit if you have a brain on your head. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu understood that Kodesh didn't mean that he should hit the yar. It means he should be responsible for it happening. But a lot of shouldn't be the one to do it. All right. Anyways, so this is important and fascinating nakud in this week's on the question which we're speaking about, taking out another one or not. And the bottom line, it's a machlokes. However, it seems to me that most places can say that you're allowed to take out another one, not like the Marsham, like the Kaf HaChaim. All right. But again, that has to do with the b'diavad which is involved. I would say it's about 50-50 with the tzitzis. Take a look at Chuvas Shevet HaKohasi. He has a very long piece on this, on the tzitzis, if it really bothers you. It could be. What about the tzitzis of the shul? I will just tell you, for people like you, I have an eitzah. No, you're not allowed to change any of them. I have to buy a whole bacon. You're not allowed to take this off of the bacon for no reason. All right. Anyways, I didn't say that. I didn't paskin over here. I just telling you. I just read what it says.
Let's say there's two sets of not kosher already in tzitzis. I mean, we're not even talking tzitzis, but he's changing a set of tzitzis, and he has two. His new strings are fatter, so he can't cut off the other two because they're still good.
Zero.
No, he says if you change
it's going to look odd.
To a puzzle, he changes them, but they'll look different to the other two. They'll look a bit strange.
I don't think that's a reason. According to this, in other words, the first thing, and this is really what's really important. The first thing, what's called the chumrah, is to do what halacha says, not what you want. You have to get you out of the picture. Now, I'm not answering your question, directly. I'm just saying first, there's a mindset over here that somebody has something that has a halachic precedent, even though you don't like it. So what? No, I'm not. I'm just saying that this is and because we live in the, what I want is what's important generation. So we do not have the proper derech eretz for what the halacha says. This is a serious issue. All right. Anyways, take a look at Shevet Kahasi. He discusses this question, Barichos. All right. The bottom line of the Shitas Ramah, what? We're in Kuf Mem Gimel Sif Dalit in the Ramah. Okay, you have it. Third line in the middle of Ramah. Shein Atzibur Rak Sefer Torah Apostle. Ve'en Sham Misha Yochel Esaknoi. Yesh Amrun Yesh Likros Boy B'Tzibur or Levarach Alav. If you don't have any other Sefer Torah, then you can do this. V'yesh Poislim, and you're not allowed to do this. Now, I just mentioned that this could happen in a Corona Minyan. I got from Yoel Steiner in the middle of this Corona, which he has that Sefer Torah on loan from the shul that they had a shaila on it. They don't have another Sefer Torah. They just wherever they are. I don't know. Anyways, and to those that say that if you have nothing else, you can use Apostle Sefer Torah. V'yesh paisim, you can't use Apostle Sefer Torah. However, v'im chumash echad shalim b'loy tos, if you have a chumash that is complete, in other words, your shemos is okay, and you have a problem in your bracious, yesh lahaka likas b'moisa chumash, because you found the psul in Vayechi, you didn't get a sefer to fix it yet, and now it's shemos. So you're allowed to lane from it because you're laning from a kosher chumash. Even though it's part of the same Sefer Torah. The Mishnah Berurah is going to ask, we'll see it inside. We learned that you cannot lane out of a chumash even if it's glil. So the Mishnah Berurah answers, that's not a kasha, because over here you have all 5 chumashim together. Either puzzle. So you don't have all 5 chumashim. So what's the answer? It's enough for this. Yeah, that you get a 75. No, that's true. What is enough and what isn't enough? That's what has to be.
It's not considered individual, even if it's surrounded by 4 other chumashim that are not 100%.
Right. But
You have a Sefer Torah, it's just puzzle. The other one's not a Sefer Torah.
correct. Very nice. Okay. The Maisa, the Bi'alacha, he's not so happy with this because there are many places that are chaylik, but that's the concept that it says over here. Let's see inside. Yesh Paislim, Chavtes, Hud Gogadasa Machabers of Gilo, Chensas Machron, with the Chatchilo Lo Yetzi Afilo Chavasayom. All the men, Schil Lichros, Rachach Limza by Toes, then Chom Sevet Terachez Ulasai, Yesh Amrim. Now, this is a fascinating thing. What's called L'chatchila, what's called B'diavad? Once you have the Sefer Torah out, so then it's called B'diavad, and you're allowed to do what? You're allowed to call up all the people? What's the other option? No, but you have to lay in 7 kriyas, right? And then, but we just said that there are those who say that you could even take it out for the beginning. So that's it. Let's see what the option is. A fascinating option. You do everything because it's b'diavad. Period. Ella, what do? This is an ingenious idea. We have a chiyuv to have zayin koyrin. What happened to Mei Chazal? The koyrin didn't make a bracha. The first guy and the last guy. And all the other guys, what did they do? They came up. So, right? So, why do you have to make any brachas? Have the first guy stay up there, call up 7 other people without making a bracha, and then we're going to have the last guy make the last bracha. You like that? I don't understand. What happened the old time?
No, but maybe they did just one finish, then it's okay, but they didn't cook it for the same shapera for the whole world.
Well, I don't think that's a problem. But whatever, then you can skip that. Why don't I understand that? This is the idea which Mishnah Berurah says. I have a better idea. The first guy made the bracha Shana, and then the last guy made the bracha Chayna. Why do you have to have the same guy make both brachas? What happened to Mei Chazal? So why don't the Mishnah Berurah say that idea? I know. I want you to think of the answer.
He more for the second bracha than the second guy.
Why?
Because really, the first, the chatchila, this is the idea of the chatchila.
One second, you guys over there on Zoom, you have the question? Parents, you have the question? Okay.
The b'diavad of the first guy is not as bad as calling up another guy.
The first guy should have had one
already
aliyah.
invested with the first bracha, which is already a b'diavad thing. So he's already
You're 90.
He's already in that b'diavad, so we let him finish off and make
The first guy should have said the bracha, finished his laning, they said after the bracha, they should have brought another set for the chatchila.
So his bracha rishona is what's carrying us through. So he should be the one to say it. Okay, so I think that's the answer.
Why? Because he got fried the first time, so he gets to get fried the second time.
He didn't get fried. He didn't do. He did up here halacha. He did exactly what he's supposed to do. He ba'etzim is allowed to make a bracha achrayna. He already has a heter to make a bracha achrayna because he started off beheter. So his much easier. So just use his bracha achrayna later on. It's a bigger kula. I mean, it's a better kula.
Why? Because he's supposed to make that second bracha anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, let's just see this inside. You finish off his aliyah. You give another bunch of people aliyahs. Those other oilim just go up and down, don't say anything. Maybe we'll get a mishberach. Anyways, who he stays there. He's the guy who makes the bracha achrayna. That's a different subject. Okay, that's according to this opinion. Chumash achad, you have a chumash. It's all one like our sefer Torah. El she'en shalim b'li toos. El chumash achad. You have one chumash of them that's beseder. Aval en sham kim chumash achad. If you only have one chumash on the glil, the kuliyam ain't karbo k'liyah because it's not covered at tzibur. All right. Yesh lahakol hainu afilu das apoisum anal the asi afilu b'shasakah calls them absolved into boys a chumash sheyirtza likros boy because then it's not kosher the chumash either. Al chumashim ashleim ve'na hachmir b'shasakah kiwan shakaponim chelik zeh shehu kaira boy ushalim. V'lo yitam milu chumash echad sheposel kuliyam likros boy k'liyah v'shani hasam shena covered at tzibur likros b'chumash echad. Mashen ken hacha yesh l'chamisha chumshin so you have a sefer Torah. So that means if you found on Monday a psul in sefer Torah and you only have one sefer Torah and you didn't have a chance to get the sefer to fix it, so then on this Thursday, you could lay. Why can you lay this Thursday? Let's see who has the wits about them.
Rosh Chodesh.
That's right. And you're in a different chumash. You found the psul on Monday in Shmois, and Rosh Chodesh you're laying in Bamidbar. Right? Ari, you should know where you're laying on Bamidbar. What page is it on? Anyways, all right.
The mafter, right?
Okay.
Amishi in Pinchas.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So that's this halacha. Okay. Halacha hey. Beis HaKnesses she'en b'hem mish yodea likros ala echad. You only have one guy who knows how to learn. Yivarach v'yikra ksas psukim b'yivarach achreim. He takes all 7 aliyahs. The chayz yivarach chila v'kar ksas psukim b'yivarach achreim. V'chen yaseh kam apomim k'misbar oilim shelo yisayom. I have no problem with this halacha, except that I think it's a stira to halacha we learned beforehand. Let's read the Mishnah Berurah. The Right, we learned this halacha. We spoke about a blind person. If you have somebody who doesn't know how to follow along, what happens? This is standard in America. We don't have this problem here in Eretz Yisrael because I think that even a Chiloni Israeli could stumble along in a Sefer Torah. I think. Is that true? Anybody know?
I make a lot of mistakes.
No, but then could they read the script of Ashuris?
Yeah.
What?
They'll mispronounce a lot of the words, but yes, they can read
They
it.
can read it. I think so. No, even they may not know what a ches is. You know, may look like a little bit funny or something, but I think they'll be able to follow along. Right? So I'm saying here we don't have that problem, but in America, the irreligious person, what? They say Kaddish in English, right? Transliterated, right? They're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to do this. But even though, what's the minhag in America that they give up such people aliyahs? Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I don't know why it's of course.
They get donations. They don't give me toys.
I hope that's not a real answer. The reason why it's of course is because we pass like the Ramah, not like the Machaber. All right. Anyways, so okay, if you match the class of Ramah, b'siv gimel the anu karna afilu am oretz afilu eni yochel likros achar mikra k'mosh t'sal Mishnah Berurah im ken yishtana haydino. And what should you do? You should better have the lidon la'olam tzach shika shivakrum b'yinvorchu ashlem sivu yatz v'kriyasa v'chem mashu ba'agra v'diva maschu u'maru v'dvarenu. The better to have them go up. Now, I just mentioned that the case in America, I'm just saying this for the sake of Rabbi Simkin that's here, it's not so pashut that you can give a person Mechal Shabbos in Aliyah. And that's so pashut. So, but whatever. That's why we're here in Ramat Beit Shemesh. We don't have to deal with these questions. Anyways, even though we have to deal with them here too, unfortunately, many times. All right. Let's going to start Kuf Mem Dalet. Shalom Dalet Batayr Me'inyan Me'inyan V'dinei Haftarah. Medalgim Banovi Ve'medalgim Batayra V'parsha Zu L'parsha Acheres. We, in Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully, Tzilasi Lekel Oilom, that we should be Zaycha B'Korov to have Nevi'im here in Shul. And then people will find out that not all Haftarahs go straight. If you sit back on your nice plush chair and you follow along in the Chumash, everything is always in the right place. But if you happen to get mafter on one of those weeks that you gotta mish around in that Haftarah book that we have, you find out that not all Haftarahs are yeah, I don't know whether it's Kisidron, but it's not. There's no jumping around. There is jumping around. So this halacha medalgim menavi, they medalgim batayra, miparsha zu leparsha acheres. V'hani nili b'shtei inyanim. V'chashinan shem yizbalbal das hashoymim. Ava v'chad inyana can go in achri mois. V'ach v'asor shakon go l'karv yom ha'kippurim. Medalgim, this is a Gemara. V'hu shelo yikra b'alpeh. I will just mention that I got an aliyah yesterday. And I really have to speak to the Gabbai of the shul. I didn't have a chance to speak to him yet. There was a bar mitzvah boy who was laning. It wasn't bar mitzvah this week, it was bar mitzvah like 2 weeks ago. And he was laning. And I had shlishi. And before he finished laning, he already was closing the Sefer Torah. It's clear to me the reason why he was able to close the Sefer Torah was because he was saying it Bal Peh. Which this is a no-no. You're supposed to have to say that you have to say inside. This is a very bad. If I'm not mistaken, they say in Brisk, a guy who lanes and he lanes the wrong word, so they throw him out. A guy who has the wrong says it wrong, they keep him. But the guy says the wrong word, that means he's not laning. He's not neman to the job. Not that he's sloppy, he's just not doing that job. He's doing the wrong thing. Anyways, so and this happens when you're jumbling around. All of us, I'm willing to say, all of us, when we daven Shemona Esrei and we turn the pages, there's at least one or two words that we say Bal Peh. You don't know it by heart. And the sin is just there, to keep us on the straight and narrow. So you don't have to pause and turn the page. If you'll see, when you get an aliyah, the Bal Kaira, well before he gets to the bottom line, he already is shuffling so that he should be able to go smoothly over to the next place. Because it's not simple to do. You can do it without a pause, and this we actually do in Treyal, so we do it a few times a year. Shouldn't go backwards. So this actually do sometimes in Treyal. Okay, it's all called one sefer. Okay, have a good night.